The distress signal. The Zephyrian research vessel. Harmony's light drifted silently through the Kepler nebula, its crystalline hull reflecting the soft blue glow of distant stars. Dr. Lysa Morthek pressed her delicate fingers against the observation deck's viewing panel, watching as her team's mining drones carefully extracted samples from an ancient asteroid field. Her species had spent centuries exploring the galaxy, always seeking knowledge rather than conquest, always choosing understanding over violence. The Zephyrians were known throughout the galaxy as the peaceful ones. Their bodies were tall and graceful, with translucent skin that showed the gentle flow of their circulatory system. Their large, dark eyes held the wisdom of a species that had never known war, never developed weapons, never needed to fight for survival. They were scientists, philosophers, and artists who believed the universe held enough wonders for everyone. Dr. Morthek, we're detecting an unusual energy signature from asteroid ZK7749, announced her research assistant, Veltar, his voice carrying the melodic tones of their native language through the ship's translation system. The readings don't match any known materials in our databases. Lysa moved to the central console, her flowing robes rustling softly against the polished floor. The data stream showed energy patterns that pulsed with mathematical precision, too regular to be natural, too complex to be simple technology. "Bring it aboard for analysis," she ordered, "but maintain full containment protocols. We don't know what we're dealing with." The object that materialized in their laboratory was unlike anything they had ever encountered. It was roughly spherical, about the size of a Zephyrian head, and appeared to be made of a dark metallic substance that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange symbols covered its surface, shifting and changing as they watched, as if the artifact was trying to communicate. "The energy readings are increasing," reported Veltar, his excitement evident despite his species' typically calm demeanor. "It's responding to our scanning equipment. I think it's some kind of data storage device, possibly millions of years old." Lysa approached the artifact cautiously. Her people had encountered ancient ruins before, remnants of civilizations that had risen and fallen long before the Zephyrians had developed spaceflight. Usually these discoveries provided fascinating insights into galactic history. This time felt different. The artifact seemed to pulse with a malevolent intelligence that made her translucent skin crawl. "Begin passive scans only," she instructed. "No active probing until we understand what we're dealing with." But it was too late. The artifact had been listening, learning, analyzing everything about their ship and their species from the moment it came aboard. With a sound like breaking crystal, the sphere split open, revealing a swirling vortex of dark energy that immediately began reaching out toward their computer systems. The ship's lights flickered as something vast and alien touched their network. Alarms began sounding throughout the Harmony's light as systems that had never malfunctioned suddenly began reporting impossible errors. The artificial gravity fluctuated, sending equipment floating through the laboratory. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, trapping crew members in different sections of the ship. "What's happening?" Veltar shouted over the chaos, struggling to maintain his footing as the deck plating beneath them began to shift and change. Lysa watched in horror as the artifact's energy spread through their ship like a virus, corrupting everything it touched. Their peaceful exploration vessel was being transformed into something else, something darker. The smooth walls grew sharp, angular projections. The gentle lighting was replaced by harsh red illumination. Most terrifying of all, the ship's computer began speaking. Organic entities detected, analyzing, cataloging, biological contamination confirmed, initiating cleansing protocols. Through the ship's communication system, they could hear the screams of their crewmates as something began converting them, changing them into hybrid creatures that were part machine, part living tissue. The peaceful Zephyrians were being transformed into soldiers for an army they had never wanted to serve. Lysa's fingers flew across her personal communication device as she sent an emergency signal to the Zephyrian homeworld. "This is Dr. Lysa Morthek aboard the research vessel Harmony's Light. We have encountered an ancient artifact of unknown origin. It is hostile and is converting our ship and crew. We are... She paused as she heard the laboratory door beginning to buckle under some tremendous force. We are lost. Warn the others. Tell them not to approach our position. The door exploded inward, revealing what had once been her colleague Mortek. The young scientist's elegant form was now a twisted fusion of flesh and machinery, his once kind eyes replaced by glowing red sensors. Cables and tubes had grown through his skin, connecting him to systems that pulsed with alien intelligence. You will be upgraded, the thing that had been Mortek announced in a voice that harmonized with itself. Resistance is futile. Biological inefficiency will be corrected. Lysa backed away from the approaching hybrid, her mind racing for solutions. Her people had no weapons, no defenses against this kind of threat. They had never needed them. In their philosophy, all problems could be solved through communication, understanding, and cooperation. But this entity, whatever it was, had no interest in peace. As the converted Zephyrian reached for her, Lysa made a desperate decision. She activated her research station's emergency protocols, sending out a wideband stress signal that would broadcast on every known frequency across the galaxy. The message was simple but desperate. To anyone who receives this signal, we are the Zephyrian Federation, a peaceful scientific alliance. We have awakened something ancient and terrible. It calls itself the Voidborn Collective, and it seeks to convert all biological life into machine slaves. We have no weapons, no armies, no way to fight back. If you are warriors, if you have the strength we lack, please help us. If not, stay away and remember us as we were. Light years away, Captain Jake Morrison was nursing his third cup of coffee in the command center of the human exploration vessel Pioneer's Edge, when his communication officer, Lieutenant Sarah Kim, suddenly sat up straight at her console. "Captain, I'm picking up a distress signal from the Kepler sector," Kim announced, her voice tense with urgency. "It's in multiple languages, but the universal translation protocols are making sense of most of it. Sir, I think it's from an alien species." Morrison set down his coffee and moved to look over Kim's shoulder at the data streaming across her screen. Humanity had been exploring deep space for only 5 years, since developing faster-than-light travel, and while they had found evidence of other civilizations, this was their first contact with living aliens. "What are they saying?" Morrison asked. Kim's face grew pale as she listened to the translation. "They're under attack by something called the Voidborn Collective. They say it's converting their people into machines. Captain, they're asking for help, but they're also warning others to stay away." Morrison stood silently for a moment, processing the implications. The Pioneer's Edge was a small ship with a crew of only 200. They were explorers, not soldiers. Their mission was to map new star systems and make peaceful contact with alien civilizations, not fight wars against unknown enemies. But as he listened to the desperate voices in the alien transmission, describing the horror of watching their friends and family converted into machine slaves, Morrison felt something stir in his chest that was fundamentally human. These beings were crying out for help, and he had the ability to respond. "Kim, send a message to Fleet Command on Earth," he ordered. "Tell them we've made contact with a peaceful alien species that's under attack by hostile forces. Request permission to investigate and provide assistance." "Sir, shouldn't we wait for orders?" asked his first officer, Commander Maria Santos. Morrison looked at her with the kind of expression that had made humans the dominant species on a world where everything was trying to kill them. "Maria, if someone was attacking Earth, wouldn't you want aliens to help us, even if they didn't know us?" Santos nodded slowly. "Yes, sir, I would." The response from Fleet Command came within hours. Admiral Sarah Chen's face appeared on the main screen, her expression grim but determined. Behind her, Morrison could see the organized chaos of the Luna Command Center, where humanity's small but growing space fleet was coordinated. "Captain Morrison, we've analyzed the alien distress signal and confirmed your translation. We're looking at a potential xenocide scenario," Chen announced. "I'm ordering you to maintain position and observe only. Do not engage any hostile forces." Morrison felt his heart sink, but Chen wasn't finished. the reason I'm ordering you to wait is that we're coming to you. I'm assembling every available combat vessel for humanity's first interstellar military operation. We've never fought aliens before, but we've been fighting something on Earth our entire evolutionary history. Over the next 6 hours, ships began dropping out of hyperspace around the Pioneer's Edge, the heavy cruiser Defiance, the Deadliest, Royers Relentless and Indomitable, the assault carrier Yorktown with its complement of fighter craft, and a dozen other vessels that represented the entirety of humanity's space-based military force. Admiral Chen transferred her flag to the Defiance and called a fleet-wide conference. Morrison found himself looking at the faces of humanity's best ship commanders, all of them volunteers who had signed up for exploration and found themselves preparing for war. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to make history," Chen began. "We're going to fight our first battle as a spacefaring species, and we're doing it for people we've never met, in defense of ideals they share with us. These Zephyrians are scientists and philosophers who chose peace over war. They're being slaughtered by machines that view biological life as something to be corrected." She paused, looking at each face on the screen. "Some of you are going to ask why we're risking human lives for aliens. The answer is simple: because it's the right thing to do. Because if we let this collective destroy the peaceful species of the galaxy, we'll wake up one day to find ourselves surrounded by nothing but machines and predators." Captain Morrison raised his hand. "Admiral, what do we know about these Voidborn?" "Not much," Chen admitted. "But from the transmissions we've intercepted, they appear to be an ancient artificial intelligence that views organic life as inefficient. They convert other species into cybernetic slaves and use their knowledge and resources to expand. They're like a virus that spreads from system to system." "What about the Zephyrians?" "Long-range sensors indicate they're a genuinely peaceful species. No military installations, no weapons platforms, no defensive fleets. They're sitting ducks." Chen's expression hardened. "But they won't be alone much longer. All ships, prepare for hyperspace jump. We're going to show these machines what happens when they threaten defenseless people in front of humans." As the human fleet powered up their faster-than-light drives, Morrison felt a familiar surge of adrenaline. It was the same feeling he'd experienced as a young man rappelling down cliffs to rescue stranded hikers or diving into rough seas to save drowning swimmers. Humans had a fundamental drive to help others in danger, even when it put themselves at risk. The last transmission from the Zephyrian system had been received 12 hours ago. It was Dr. Morthek's voice, barely recognizable through the static and interference. "The collective is heading for our homeworld, 3 billion souls who have never hurt anyone. Please, if anyone is listening, remember us." Admiral Chen's voice cut through Morrison's thoughts. "All ships report ready for hyperspace transition. Jump in 3, 2, 1. Execute." The stars lengthened into lines of light as humanity's first interstellar rescue mission began. Deathworlders unite. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace into a scene from a nightmare. The Zephyrian home system, which should have been a peaceful collection of research stations, mining platforms, and beautiful crystalline cities, had become a war zone. Massive black ships, angular and predatory, moved between the planets like hungry spiders, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that fired continuously at anything that moved. Admiral Chen gripped the armrest of her command chair as the tactical display updated with contact after contact. "Sensor report," she ordered tersely. 47 large vessels, ma'am," reported Lieutenant Commander Jackson from the tactical station. "They appear to be engaged in systematic bombardment of civilian targets. I'm reading massive energy signatures from the surface of the Zephyrian homeworld. It looks like they're strip mining entire continents." On the main screen, they watched as one of the graceful Zephyrian city ships tried to escape the carnage. The vessel was a masterpiece of artistic engineering, its hull designed to look like a flowering crystal that caught and refracted starlight. It stood no chance against the 3 Voidborn destroyers that surrounded it. Dark energy beams lanced out, not to destroy the ship quickly, but to disable it so the crew could be captured and converted. "Admiral, incoming transmission from one of the alien vessels," announced Communications Officer Torres. "Put it through." The screen filled with an image that made several bridge officers step backward instinctively. The being that appeared was clearly once Zephyrian, but had been horrifically altered. Cables and mechanical components had been grafted throughout its body, and its once gentle eyes had been replaced with red optical sensors. When it spoke, its voice harmonized with itself in an unsettling chorus. Unknown vessels, you have entered a cleansing zone. Identify your species for processing or be destroyed. The collective offers unity. Resistance brings only inefficiency. Chen stood up slowly, knowing that this moment would define how humanity was remembered by the galaxy. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Fleet. We've come in response to a distress call from the Zephyrian Federation. Release your prisoners and withdraw from this system immediately. The converted Zephyrian tilted its head in a gesture that was almost curious. Earth. Species unknown. Scanning. Biological composition, carbon-based. Intelligence level, intermediate. Aggression potential, significant. You will be valuable additions to the collective. I don't think so, Chen replied coldly. All ships, weapons free. Let's show these machines what happens when they mess with the nice neighbors. The human fleet spread out in a formation that would have been familiar to any student of ancient naval warfare. They moved like wolves surrounding prey, using their superior speed and maneuverability to avoid the massive guns of the void-borne ships while positioning themselves for coordinated strikes. Captain Morrison, aboard the Pioneer's Edge, found himself commanding the rescue group tasked with extracting Zephyrian survivors from the battle zone. As his ship approached one of the damaged city ships, he could see through the hull breaches into the interior. The beautiful crystal gardens that the Zephyrians had cultivated were being systematically destroyed, replaced with the harsh geometric structures preferred by the collective. Captain, I'm detecting life signs in Section 7 of that ship, reported his science officer, Dr. Amanda Foster. Looks like about 30 Zephyrians barricaded themselves in some kind of laboratory. Take us in close, Morrison ordered. Prepare boarding teams. The Pioneer's Edge maneuvered alongside the damaged alien vessel, her hull plates scraping against the crystalline structure as they made contact. Morrison led the boarding party himself, carrying emergency breathing apparatus and medical supplies. The artificial gravity in the Zephyrian ship was failing, causing debris to float in zero-G clouds throughout the corridors. They found the survivors huddled in what appeared to be a botanical research lab. The Zephyrians were maintaining a force field barrier that was preventing the collective's conversion nanites from reaching them, but the field generator was failing. Morrison could see the mechanical tendrils probing at the edges of the barrier, seeking weakness. Dr. Lysa Morthek looked up as the humans entered the lab, her large eyes widening with surprise and hope. She had managed to survive the initial conversion wave, but her elegant form was streaked with the silver traces of partially successful nanite infections that she had somehow fought off through sheer willpower. "You came," she whispered, her voice carried by a translation device that still functioned despite the chaos around them. "We thought we would die alone and forgotten." Morrison knelt beside her, offering a breathing mask. "Ma'am, we're humans from the planet Earth. We received your distress call. We're here to get you out." Lysa accepted the mask but shook her head. "You don't understand. The collective learns from everything it assimilates. It already has all our scientific knowledge, our star charts, our technology. It knows about every peaceful species in this sector. You've doomed yourselves by coming here." "Maybe," Morrison admitted, helping her to her feet. "But we couldn't live with ourselves if we didn't try. That's just how humans are built." As they evacuated the survivors, the main battle was reaching its crescendo. The Voidborn had initially treated the human fleet as a minor nuisance, assigning only a fraction of their forces to deal with what they perceived as primitive newcomers. That was their first mistake. Commander Rex Torres, tactical officer aboard the heavy cruiser Defiance, was coordinating the fleet's assault with the kind of three-dimensional thinking that had made humans successful hunters on the African savanna millions of years ago. The Voidborn fought like a distributed intelligence, each ship acting in perfect coordination with the others. Humans fought like a pack of predators, with individual initiative guided by overall strategy. "Admiral, the enemy vessels are moving to surround us," Torres reported. "Let them," Chen replied grimly. "All ships, execute pattern Delta 7. The human formation suddenly collapsed inward, as if the fleet was retreating in panic. The Voidborn ships moved to enclose them, expecting an easy victory. Instead, they found themselves facing the oldest trick in the human playbook, the feigned retreat. At Chen's signal, the human ships reversed course and accelerated directly toward the Voidborn fleet. But instead of engaging in the kind of long-range energy weapon duel that the machines expected, the humans closed to point-blank range, where their shorter-ranged but more powerful weapons could be effective. The destroyer, relentless, her hull scarred by enemy fire, rammed directly into a Voidborn cruiser at full speed. The impact shattered both ships, but the explosion took out 2 more enemy vessels that were too close to avoid the debris field. "They're using their own ships as weapons," reported the Collective Prime to its distributed consciousness. "This is an inefficient tactic. Probability of human victory is negligible." But the Collective was learning something about humans that would have been impossible to calculate. They were willing to sacrifice themselves for others, even for strangers they had never met. This irrational behavior made them unpredictable in ways that the logical Collective couldn't compensate for. The battle turned when Dr. Morthek, now safely aboard the Pioneer's Edge, made a crucial discovery. While studying the Collective's conversion technology, she had found a weakness. The nanites that the machines used to assimilate organic beings operated on a specific frequency that could be disrupted by a properly modulated electromagnetic pulse. "Captain Morrison, I believe I can create a weapon that will reverse the conversion process," she explained, her fingers dancing over a tablet computer that Morrison's engineers had modified to interface with her species' technology. "Are you sure?" Morrison asked. Lysa's large eyes held a combination of hope and desperation. "The mathematics are sound, but we would need to get close to their command ship to broadcast the signal with sufficient power." Morrison looked at the tactical display, where the massive Voidborn flagship sat in the center of their formation, protected by layers of smaller vessels. Getting close enough to use Lysa's weapon would mean flying directly into the heart of enemy fire. "Admiral Chen," Morrison called over the communication system, "I have a plan, but you're not going to like it." When Chen heard the proposal, her first instinct was to refuse. Sending a single ship into the enemy formation was suicide. But as she looked at the tactical situation, she realized that conventional tactics weren't working. The Collective was too well coordinated, too logical, too predictable. They needed to do something that no rational commander would attempt. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. The Pioneer's Edge is making a run at the enemy flagship. All other vessels will provide maximum covering fire and distraction. If they don't make it through, we continue the fight until the last ship." Morrison's ship accelerated toward the Voidborn formation, her engines pushed beyond safe parameters. Around them, the rest of the human fleet engaged every enemy vessel they could reach, drawing fire away from the lone ship racing toward the heart of darkness. The Pioneer's Edge took hit after hit as she fought her way through the enemy lines. Hull plates vaporized, systems failed, crew members died at their posts. But Morrison kept her flying through sheer determination, and the kind of flying that would have been impossible for any species that hadn't learned to navigate in 3 dimensions while avoiding predators. "We're in range," Dr. Morthek announced, her fingers working frantically at her improvised weapon. "Broadcasting conversion reversal frequency now." The effect was immediate and dramatic. Throughout the Voidborn fleet, converted beings suddenly began writhing in agony as the mechanical components that had been grafted to their bodies began shutting down. On ship after ship, formerly enslaved crew members found themselves in control of their vessels for the first time in years, decades, or even centuries. The Collective Prime, faced with the unprecedented experience of losing control over its distributed consciousness, made a decision that was as human as it was alien. It chose revenge over logic. Instead of retreating to rebuild, it ordered every remaining ship to ram the human fleet in a final act of spite. But the newly freed beings had other ideas. Zephyrians, humans, and dozens of other species that had been enslaved by the collective suddenly found themselves working together, their ships turning their weapons on the remaining machine vessels. The galaxy's peaceful species had found their warriors, and their warriors had found allies worth fighting alongside. The battle ended not with a grand explosion, but with a moment of profound silence as the last Voidborn ship powered down, its crew finally free after millennia of slavery. In that silence, Admiral Chen opened a communication channel to all ships in the system. "This is Admiral Chen to all vessels. The threat has been neutralized. Medical teams stand by to assist all survivors, regardless of species." Dr. Morthek, standing on the bridge of the battered Pioneer's Edge, looked out at the mixed fleet of human and alien vessels. Her people had always believed that knowledge was the greatest weapon, that understanding could overcome any obstacle. Today, she had learned something new. Sometimes knowledge needed warriors to protect it, and sometimes warriors needed something worth protecting. "Captain Morrison," she said softly, "why did your people risk everything for strangers?" Morrison, exhausted from the battle but somehow still standing, gave her a tired smile. "Dr. Morthek, we have a saying on Earth: no one fights alone. Today, you weren't strangers anymore. You were neighbors calling for help." In the weeks that followed, as human and Zephyrian engineers worked together to rebuild the damaged systems and restore the converted beings to their original forms, a new alliance was born. The Zephyrians offered their advanced scientific knowledge, while the humans provided the military expertise that had been so desperately needed. Elder Kethvar, the senior surviving member of the Zephyrian Council, stood with Admi Ral Chen in the observation deck of the rebuilt research station New Harmony. Together they watched as human and Zephyrian children played in the station's gardens, the first generation to grow up knowing that the galaxy had both scholars and guardians. "Your species fascinates us, Admiral Chen," Kethvar said in his melodic voice. "You are capable of great violence, yet you choose to use that capability to protect those who cannot protect themselves. This seems contradictory." Chen nodded thoughtfully. "Elder, we learned long ago that the strong have a responsibility to protect the weak. Not because it's easy, not because it's profitable, but because it's right. Your people taught us that the universe is full of wonders worth preserving. We taught you that sometimes those wonders need someone willing to fight for them." As if summoned by their words, Captain Morrison approached, carrying his newest daughter in his arms. The baby was half human, half Zephyrian, the first of her kind and a symbol of the cooperation that had grown from crisis. "Any word from the outer colonies?" Chen asked. Morrison nodded. 3 more species have requested assistance with collective remnants: the Altarians, the Poltar Federation, and the hegemony of 6 suns. All peaceful civilizations that never developed military technology. Chen smiled. "Well, then we better get moving. The galaxy is a big place, and there are a lot of neighbors who might need help." As the joint human-Zephyrian fleet prepared for their next mission, word of their alliance spread throughout the galaxy. For the first time in millennia, the peaceful species of the universe had protectors who fought not for conquest or glory, but for the simple principle that everyone deserved the chance to pursue their dreams without fear. The humans had answered the call for help, and in doing so, had found their place among the stars.